Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Science Fiction Prototyping Podcast. I am Brian David Johnson, the author of the Science Fiction Prototyping column in the IEEE Computer Magazine. And this month in the podcast, we are exploring 6 insights about science fiction prototyping. And those 6 insights come from 6 different students. And these are students from the California College of Art in San Francisco, California. They are taking my class in strategic foresight in the Design MBA program. And as a part of that program, we use science fiction prototyping as a tool, one of many tools that the students use to look out into the future and imagine the different possibilities. And in this interview with Ryan really keys into, I think, an interesting area around science fiction prototyping. And I'm going to allow him to tell you about that in my interview. But I think something really kind of dawned on him very early on as he began to apply science fiction prototyping to the work that he was doing. So let's listen to that interview, and we'll be back. Ryan, welcome to the Science Fiction Prototyping Podcast.
Thanks, Brian.
So, Ryan, as you've been applying science fiction prototyping, you have this kind of interesting idea that the really important part of science fiction prototyping is the science fiction, that science fiction brings something special to the process and to the way of thinking. Why is that?
Well, I think fundamentally, as humans, we aspire to have a narrative. It's what gives meaning to our lives and maybe the daily mundane way that we operate. I referenced this in your class a lot, What Technology Wants by Kevin Kelly, and that account actually kind of made me have an existential, not crisis, I was fine, and I overuse that term, existential crisis, but it was all about narratives and how that was the idea that caused me so much distress. And which maybe is bad, but it was just it kind of signifies the impact that these stories that we create have on the way that we live our lives.
So what do you think then? So if science fiction and these narratives can have a huge impact, and do have a huge impact, it's often said that human beings are sort of believing machines, we're story machines. Why do you think then that the intersection of science fiction and science fact, putting it into these stories, why do you think, or how can it have a bigger impact on people?
Well, if it provides this kind of periscope that we can kind of see where we're heading, we can kind of begin to immerse ourselves in this narrative structure. So I guess again, like meta-narratives and religion are different things like that. That is something we're very much rooted in right now. But again, I think that can leverage us. It can get us to a more interesting level of, existence or experience.
Do you think that then gives us, a way to get us to that new level, to get us to the new area, does that then give us a new platform for discussion? Do you think that then discussions that we have, you have podcasts and you do this a lot, so
a little.
What are those discussions? Like, say, how does that free us up to have different discussions, do you think?
Well, again, it broadens the scope of possibility and plausibility. Even if you're just questioning, hey, is this even remotely possible? It does get the conversation started. Or it could still provide a context like, actually, we're on, this was once thought to be science fiction and is now becoming science fact. There's several representative examples. I won't list them because I can't think of them. But, one thing I was thinking about, we are very informed by these narratives and these stories, and I was going to bring up Back to the Future too. How many times do you hear someone question our rate of technological advancement by saying, why don't we have hoverboards yet? And that comment can be in jest, but it still is an expression of disappointment. But also, if you look around, there is a company that's using the idea of hoverboards. The traversable space is more limited to copper, but the application is almost more venerable.
Right.
Because it's like, how can we use this to protect and fortify buildings that might be subjected to earthquakes or tsunamis or things of that nature. So again, like, I don't know if the idea came from that, but it's arguable that it did.
Well, and I think we can argue that nothing great was ever built by human beings that wasn't imagined first. And so that notion of that, what science fiction prototyping can do, and specifically, as you say, the science fiction part of science fiction prototyping, allows us to just go a little bit further and have conversations that we wouldn't normally have.
And what is it that you keep saying about being just on the other side of the what is the
as futurists and as foresight practitioners, it's our job to live on the other side of the exponential curve.
And that's really difficult because, I mean, even if you're conditioned to think a certain way, again, there is like, well, if we do believe in the singularity or subscribe to it, or even just conjecturing about it, you know, there is this event horizon. And if we reach this event horizon, things could be so beyond our comprehension that, you know, well, again, that's a place of conversation, but just think like people from the past couldn't probably envision the future that we have today. They would probably not be able, again, they would be totally incomprehensible to them.
Right.
Well, perhaps. But, so it's just exciting to think, okay, if you apply that to us, then anything could be on the other side of that horizon.
Right, that science fiction prototyping also gives us the way to have a conversation about what's on the other side of that.
Exciting, invigorating, bleak.
Exactly, all those things.
All the areas.
So Ryan, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
I think Ryan has a really interesting perspective because Ryan has a really interesting background and does a lot of things, especially kind of his podcast and thinking about the singularity. He's got a lot of different ways of thinking about these different tools, and I like his notion that the keying into the science fiction side of science fiction prototyping and what that meant and what that allowed him to do. So thank you so much for joining us on the Science Fiction Prototyping Podcast. As always, if you have any science fiction prototypes that you would like to share, or if you have any ideas for future columns, you can always get in touch with me I am brian.david.johnson@intel.com, or you can always find me on Twitter. I'm at IntelFuturist. Remember, this is one of 4 podcasts where we're looking at 6 insights about science fiction prototyping. So have a listen to those, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.